Transnational Organized Crime, Terrorism Nexus, Global Security, Homeland Security. Deirdre M. Stokeland. Objectives. This study will address concerns, nexus, transnational organized crime terrorism, connections relevant to concerns, global security, and homeland security. There is a concern of potential links between transnational organized crime and terrorism, and whether any connections may be particularly relevant in terms of global security and homeland security in the United States. The answer to these conditions or concerns are in the Word of God, and it reads, Matthew 24, 6 through 12. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Introduction. This study will address any potential links between transnational organized crime and terrorism. Accordingly, if any associations are revealed between transnational organized crime and terrorism, the findings will be presented and the nexus evaluated to determine any potential threats globally or internationally. To properly identify similarities or differences in the activities of transnational organized crime and terrorism, there must be a clear understanding of what each entails. The 21st century has given the world globalization and the ability to share transnational influence through collective cultures, international goods, shared wealth, and the ability to travel to places beyond the borders of nations. Technological advances have allowed for businesses and families to communicate virtually face to face and diverse cultures to share knowledge and internationally develop friendships. However, history has revealed that with the benefits of positive and productive advances comes disruptive actors to negatively capitalize on the good of others. Deviant actors conspire to possess the peace and prosperity of others, no matter the cost. On the transnational level, the challenging actors are organized crime groups and terrorist organizations. Both sets of actors independently have a powerful history of violence and death. With the major scientific advancements of the 21st century, a union between organized crime and terrorism would have devastating impacts, especially for developing states. Network of transnational organized crime incorporates any means necessary to obtain and distribute illegal commodities and are known for using intimidation and violence. Supply and demand drives the illegal business of organized crime because the global market, wealth, and the power that wealth generates are the primary resolve of organized crime. The illegal global market supplies international crime with its commodities, transporting drugs, illegal firearms, human trafficking, sex trafficking, poaching, and transporting endangered species of fauna and flora and priceless historic artifacts. This is a short list of commodities. Transnational organized crime threats, threat to global public goods, 2022. The list of means used to obtain financial wealth, political influence, and power are exhaustive, and the statistics used to hide and protect these enterprises are equally as exhaustive. Profits gained through the many illegal national and transnational activities are then strategically hidden or laundered through legitimate businesses, foreign banks, or large legal personal purchases like luxury cars, yachts, and homes. This complex chain of events requires a strategic and organized infrastructure, both nationally and transnationally. Terrorism. The term terrorism is described as the use of force or violence against persons or property and a violation of the criminal laws of the United States for purposes of intimidation, coercion, or ransom. FEMA 2024. Historically, the United States and its allies have experienced many such threats and continue to encounter more ide- ideologically and geographically diffused terrorist activities, both nationally and transnationally. Bureau of Counterterrorism 2023. The Country Reports on Terrorism 2022 was distributed in compliance with Title 22 of the United States Code, Section 2656F, the Act, Bureau of Counterterrorism 2023. The annual report is prepared by the United States Department of State, and a full and complete annual report is provided to Congress reporting on terrorism for those countries and groups meeting the criteria of the Act. Bureau of Counterterrorism 2023. The report details significant human rights issues that are believed to influence the state of terroristic activity in many countries. Statistics collected for the annual country report provide insight on human rights issues which may have impeded effective counterterrorism policies and programs, or revealed human rights issues that may have supported causes and conditions for further violence. The Bureau of Counterterrorism report identifies such human rights violations to include, but not limited to, unlawful arbitrary killing, forced disappearances, torture, violence against religious minorities, forced and bonded labor, and arbitrary detention by both government and non-government actors. Bureau of Counterterrorism 2023. The Nexus. The potential links between terrorism and organized crime slash violent crime groups are considered intrinsically linked. Studies between 1996 and 2024 have analyzed various similarities and differences between terrorist groups and organized crime groups. Onate et al. 2021. However, no recent studies have been located by this research that specifically address connections in terms of global security and homeland security in the United States. Here, the study will address evidence that may be particularly relevant in terms of global security and homeland security in the United States. The official website for the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs in 1996 dedicated 43 pages to address terrorism and transnational organized crime and provide insight concerning the topic. J.P. Schmid authored the study, Links Between Transnational Organized Crime and Terroristic Crimes. Schmid began his findings focused on terrorism and transnational organized crime in terms of their individual characteristics and similarities. The, discuss- the discussion began with major differences in motivation between two systems. Petrich, 2023. Different rationales for illicit behavior. Differences and rationale for illicit behavior. Each group of players, transnational organized crime groups, and terrorist groups have their own rationale for their illicit behavior. Smide, 1996. Terrorist groups are ideologically motivated and are not financially driven to illicit markets. Organized crime groups are highly market driven and continuously fighting for the higher level of financial power and a bigger share of illegal markets. Petrich, 2022. When the legal system apprehends these illicit actors, their legal agendas are entirely different. When political terrorists are brought to trial, they usually and freely admit their terroristic acts, and the court system becomes an opportunity for their political declarations. Petrich, 2022. In contrast, members of organized crime groups commonly seek to downplay their involvement in criminal activities. However, members of both groups are rational and intentional actors. Both groups use intimidation, violence, and produce victims. Petrich, 2022. Global and Homeland Security. The motives behind illicit behaviors, whether perpetrated by organized crime groups or terrorist groups, are at the core the same. Both groups have an illicit agenda. Both are violent and have no reservations about killing to meet their agenda. Meeting illicit agendas are particularly relevant in terms of global security and homeland security in the United States. Phillips and Shell, 2023. The source of deviant globalization rests in criminal activity of transnational organized crime groups and terrorist organizations. Each group is powerful on their own. Together, their impact could be devastating. For that realization, important questions follow. If the two groups are working together, for what purpose? Do criminal terrorists, organized crime groups represent a greater or lesser threat than their politically oriented counterparts? Are organized crime groups preparing to topple governments? Philip and Shell, 2023. Then a key question for policymakers is whether the crime terror nexus is an overblown fear of what if, or is the union a legitimate relationship between two illicit factions? Petrich, 2022. In this post 9/11 environment, terrorism remains one of the most significant security concerns among policymakers. What if transnational organized criminal groups converge or diversify to politically complex criminal activities with established terrorist groups? The possibility represents a major force multiplier, augmenting their ability to disrupt and undermine legitimate governance, resist demobilization, and continue to carry out attacks against civilian populations. Petrich, 2022. Conclusion. It is plausible to express concern about connections between terrorism and organized crime. Nothing noting the benefits for terrorists in particular. In the article Dogs and Cats Living Together, Exploring the Crime Terror Nexus, Europol's 2021 Terrorism Situation Report described cases of crime terror cooperation throughout Europe involving a wide variety of groups. Phillips and Shell, 2023. Why do terrorist crime groups cooperate with organized crime groups? And what factors lead to this cooperation? As the examples above illustrate, these connections occur in diverse environments and among groups with distinct motivation. This cooperation is puzzling because criminals might want to avoid the government's attention frequently brought upon terrorist organizations, while many terrorist groups seeking to represent a religious or ideological cause do not want their own reputation sullied by links to criminal activity. Phillips and Shell, 2023. Terroristic threats have resulted in large scale losses of life, the destruction of property, extensive catastrophic illness, and injuries. The results of terroristic threats create the displacement of large numbers of people and devastating economic loss both nationally and internationally. Recent technological advances on ongoing international political unrest are components of the increased risk to national security. FEMA, 2024. The events of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon brought the reality of terrorism to the front door of the United States government. The events of that day required the United States government's policymakers to establish a strong and sophisticated counterterrorism enterprise to reduce the threat of large-scale terrorist attacks on the homeland. FEMA 2024. More than 20 years later, the terrorist threats before the nation are more ideologically and geographically diffuse. Respond to the initial question or concern of this study and to conclude, this research has determined that the potential links between transnational organized crime and terrorism can pose a threat to global security and homeland security in the United States. Phillips and Shell, 2023.